Before we start this video, a large thank you to uking12, Garrett, Brammy, Luca, and Simio Michael, a name I unfortunately cannot pronounce. Thank you for supporting my friend Matthew and David for their support on Patreon. I hope you guys enjoy the video.
Okay guys, so let's start by going into our scripts folder and we're going to open up the character network manager. And what we want to do is add a few variables here, and these variables are going to represent the animation variables on our normal player. So if you were the host, basically you would assign the vertical, horizontal, and move amount, whatever it is on your animator. That's the vertical, horizontal, and move amount. The move amount will be on your input manager. And as you would probably guess by now, if you're not the owner of this player object, we're going to take these values and we're going to assign those to our animator, and that will make the character animate when they move. So again, basically if you are the owner of this object, you just assign your network variable whatever your animator values are, and if you're not, then you take the values from the network manager and assign them to your animator on the game. So basically, if you join a friend, then your player object in their game will assign their animators the values that you have here. So let's make one for vertical movement, horizontal movement, and move amount. I'm just going to put network movement as the keyword here. And I apologize if you hear odd puppy noises. My dog's in here having a nap and he kind of makes strange noises in his sleep sometimes. So I'm going to go to the player locomotion manager now and then go to the base class of the character locomotion manager. And I'm going to go to update. And you can see here we have a check for if we're not the owner return. I'm actually going to comment that out, but I'm going to make an override here on the update. The reason why I'm going to comment that out is because depending on how it looks, I might allow ground check to be casted on both sides. But this is something you got to try and see how it feels with your physics. Because sometimes if you just have the ground check happen while also copying the location of the other player, it looks good. Sometimes it doesn't. So for now, I'm just going to comment it out. We're going to make a lot of iterations to this as we go on to see what feels and looks the best. So next I'm going to say if the player is the owner though, then we're going to obviously assign the network vertical, horizontal, and move amounts some variables. Now, we don't have a network manager on the player manager, so let's make a network or a player network manager variable called player network manager. And on awake, I'm going to say player network manager is equal to get component player network manager. I'm also going to put hide and inspector on all these variables because we don't have them public so we can drag them in. We have them public so we can reference them from other scripts, so we don't need to see them unless they weren't working for some reason. Then we could use that for debugging purposes, but right now we don't need to see them. The inspector just kind of takes up space. So now, if you guys aren't sure about the whole idea of owning or is owner and is not owner, you should really understand that before moving on. Otherwise, a lot of this is not going to make sense to you. But if we are the owner of this game object, so that means we are the player controlling this, then we're going to assign these network variables some data. And if not, and this is just an object in our game that's present being controlled by somebody else, we copy the values from this network manager and assign them to our animator. So I'm going to make a header for animator movement values. I'm just going to make public float vertical, horizontal, and move amount. And I'm just going to take these straight from the input handler. I'm just putting them here for kind of just ease of use. You can take them straight from the input handler if you want, or do it over there if it's more neat to you. Again, there's no specific reason why I'm putting them here. So you don't need to hyper focus on that as long as you're getting the values. I'm actually going to put them on the character locomotion manager. That's the base class. And we're probably going to do something slightly different for the AI because the AI doesn't use input, obviously. So we'll just send over the move amount from the state. But anyway, I'm not going to get into that right now because we're doing the player. So let's just say player.player network manager vertical movement amount dot value equals vertical movement, horizontal equals horizontal movement, and then move amount equals move amount. And that's it. So we would have to do something here for sprinting, but we wouldn't do it basically right here because on our end, we don't need to really say, we can make a bool actually in the network manager for is sprinting for other reasons. That's useful too, but we can just assign 2 as the vertical movement because if you remember that in our blend tree, 2 is the place in the vertical blend tree where you switch to sprinting. Yeah, there goes my dog. So else, if you're not the owner, you're going to say move amount is equal to, and then just paste the network variable. So again, just going to say move amount is equal to, or vertical move amount is equal to the player.player network manager.vertical move amount.value. Do the same thing with horizontal and the same thing with your move amount. So then from there, we're actually going to take these values and assign them to our animator if we're not the owner. Because if we are the owner, obviously on that side, it's already happening. We've already set up logic ages ago to assign these values to our animator. So first, let's make some comments here for some pseudocode. Obviously, if the player is sprinting, we apply 2 to the vertical, and even if we're locked on, we just don't apply strafing. If the player is locked on, then we use the horizontal movement as well. That would indicate strafing animations. So we need a couple things to happen here. we can put down a is sprinting flag on the network manager because that's handy to use in further feature logic as well. And it's just nice to have it to know if the other player is sprinting. But we definitely need the locked on bool. So delete the is sprinting from movement flags, and then delete the lock on flag from the input manager. That's going to give you a whole lot of errors. Basically, we're replacing these two bools with two flags on the character network manager, and we're doing this because whenever a network variable changes on one side, it changes for everybody. So basically, there's no way to know if a person in another game had their is sprinting bool changed. It was just on a random script. But if it's a network variable, then whenever they change it, it will appear for everybody on the network. I'm sure a lot of you knew that with network variables, but for those who didn't, that's why we use network variables, and that's kind of the purpose of them. And they only update when they change, so they're not constantly requesting an update like every frame. So is sprinting is equal to a new network variable bool, initialize it at false, and is locked on, same thing, initialize it at false. Save that. Then you're going to get a whole lot of errors. So I'm going to start off with sprinting, I think. We'll just correct all of those first, and then we'll do locked on. And I'm just going to record through this because these are probably going to be in some very strange places. So the first one's in heavy attack action. So I'm going to copy character.character.networkmanager.isPrinting.value, and then save that. And next one is on light attack action. So again, we're checking for that sprint and handle the running attack. Just check for the sprinting.value. And this is a lock on one, so we'll come back to that in a second. I'm just going to get all the sprinting ones first. So the next sprinting one looks like it's, on the deduct sprinting stamina. So that's the player stats manager. You can also put character even after player because it's a base class and inherits from it. And we have it on the base class too. So player.character.network.manager still works because we have a character network manager variable on our character manager. This one over here is on the player locomotion manager again. There's a few here. Okay, so this one over here is on the camera handler. That's not what we want. That's a lock-on variable. Okay, we got another one over here on the input handler, a few actually. This might be the last of the sprinting flags. So again, you can say player.character.network.manager if you want, or player.player.network.manager because it gets both. It's all the same. So that's the input handler. We got that one. We got that one as well. Okay, so there's a few more here too on the player locomotion manager that I missed. This is under handle grounded movement, and that one's a lock-on flag, so leave that. There's a few here, like 3, 4. Okay. That might be all of them. There might be another one down there in their handle sprinting and rolling, maybe. Yeah, there's probably a couple more. Nope, not there. All right, this is player locomotion manager again. That's good. Under the input handler, under handle hold LB input, we have one for sprinting. This is just like months or years of flags we put in over the course of these episodes. We're just essentially changing. So there's quite a few. Okay. That's all the sprinting flags. Now the lock-on flags, the first one here is on the camera handler, input handler.lock-on flag. We would change that to, this is on the the camera handler, to be player.player network manager or character network manager is locked on.value. And that's good. So I'm going to copy that right to the player network manager so I can just paste this and highlight it and kind of overwrite anything that I see. There's only 9 of these, so there's not too many. Okay, so this other one here is on the player locomotion manager. Player.input handler should be player.player.network.manager.lockon.value. And the same thing here. This next one is over on the player locomotion manager again. And I'm going to save that. And this other one is on the camera handler. And we're checking if input handler.lockon flag. It's on line 270 for me. It could be different for you. Save that. This next one is on the input handler again, line 441. And there's a few here right below it. 448, 458, and 451. So again, just paste it as need be. And the way we're doing this, when we replace all these, nothing should be broken. It should just work again, except we'll have the difference being, instead of it being a bool on a regular script, it's now a flag on a network manager. So basically anybody who's connected to you can see it. Only the owner can write it though. When we say read and write, that's what we mean also. The owner can change these variables. If someone who's not the owner tries to change them, you'll get an error. So that's why if you're ever changing these variables, you have to check if you're the owner first and only allow the owner to change it. And the last one is on line 454, and this is on the input handler. And I think we're good to go now. So let's see, let's save this. And I'm going to jump over here to the input handler, and right below our handle movement input, I'm going to say player.player.locomotion.manager.set movement values. I'm going to make this a function. It doesn't exist yet. And I'm going to pass our vertical, horizontal, and move amount. And all I'm going to do is just basically pass these values from our input manager right to the locomotion manager so we can assign those to the network variable. So you can see here we have vertical, horizontal, move amount. when we control our character. So let's make a public void on the player locomotion manager here. Set movement values, pass our float for vertical, float horizontal, and float for move amount. And again, if you guys want to do this some other way, that's okay. This is just preference. If you would rather just take it straight from the input handler, go for it. It's honestly no different in functionality. Just do what makes the most sense to you and feels the most neat or organized. So vertical movement equals vertical, horizontal movement equals horizontal, move amount equals, okay, I got something wrong here. Let me check the name of the variable. Maybe movement amounts, but I thought I named this one movement amounts. So let's see. Yeah, okay, I think I did. I'm just going to scroll up. Let's see. Yes, it is definitely movement amount. So movement amount equals move amount. Okay, and then right down here, let's actually start writing logic now that we have our flags. If you're not the owner, we can say if player.player.network.manager is sprinting.value. Then we want to do some logic. And all we want to do here now is really just assign the vertical to 2 and the horizontal to 0. So we'll say player.animator.setFloat vertical to 0.1f time.delta time. So just assign the vertical to 2, and that's why we need the sprinting flag here. We need to know if they are sprinting so we can change the vertical to 2. And the horizontal to 0. And then return, because if you're sprinting, then this is going to even override the strafing animations. Now, if you are locked on, then we're going to apply our strafing animation set. So then we use the horizontal. And if you're not, we're just applying our normal motion. So we use our move amount. It's the exact same way we set up our regular player. We just got to mirror it to the person who's connected to us. So vertical would equal vertical movement here for locked on, and horizontal would equal horizontal movement. And if you're not locked on, horizontal would equal 0, and your vertical would equal your move amount. And it's just that easy. So this should work now. So we're going to save this and jump into the game and see if it does. And then we're going to get animation actions working. So I'm going to save the scene here. First, go into your edit and project settings and go to physics and tick auto sync transforms. This is important because sometimes you actually won't get movement updates on other players who are connected to you. So make sure you check that. As you can see here, I'm moving on the other client, and you can see here on my host view, he's definitely running around and it shows the movement animations. So that is working as intended. Sprinting also works for those animations as well. So now let's actually get some actions moving. You can see here if I lock onto, it actually strafes and does all that properly. But if I were to try to move to do any kind of action animation, it would just move me, but it wouldn't actually perform the action animation. So let's make our first server and client RPCs. So a server RPC, I'll leave a link in the description by the way to read about them, is basically a message from any client to the server. And we're going to call it notify server of animation. And then we have to end with the prefix server RPC. If you don't end with that in the name, it'll give you an error. We're going to pass an oolong for the client ID, and we're going to pass a string for the animation ID. And if you want to, you can pass a bool for is interacting or is performing action if you need. I don't think you need this right now, but I'm going to pass it because in the future it will likely be useful. You don't need to pass it though. All you really need right now is the animation ID. So if we are the server, you have to check for the server because only the servers can perform a client RPC. And a client RPC is a message to one or all clients from the server. So I'll make a comment up here. This is sent to the server from a client. And then if we are the server, we're going to run a client RPC. And a client RPC is sent from the server to one or all clients. Well, several or all clients, or just one, or whatever you direct it to. But defaultly, it's going to go to all of them. So let's call this public void. And we're going to say process animation client RPC. And like the server RPC, you have to end with the phrase client RPC. I'm going to call it process all clients animation because what it does is if you play an animation, it tells every other client on the server, hey, get this guy's game object to play this animation for us because on his end, he just did it. So basically in my game, if I do a light attack, I tell the server tells my game object on everybody else's game to also do a light attack. That's it. So we check and we say if client ID does not equal network-manager.singleton.local client ID, then we perform the animation. Why are we checking to make sure it's not the same one? Well, we don't want to play it twice. Like if I play an animation on my end, I don't need to play an animation on my end again for me. Do you understand what I'm saying? So I skip my game object by checking for the client ID. If the client ID is me, then I don't play it on my end. I play it on your end. So basically this function gets called on every single client if the server sends it out. So this client RPC, everybody's connected to the game, will get this when I play an animation or you play an animation. So we're going to right below that say private void. This is a regular function. This is our last one. We're going to call this perform animation from server. We can actually make this client RPC private too. This doesn't need to be public. So perform animation from server. And then this is going to be pretty much an identical, well, not quite identical, but very similar function from our regular play target animation function. So we can actually jump over and look at that now because we have to edit that as well. Go to your character animator manager or whatever one contains your base class for play target action animation. And we're only going to change this just a little bit. So you need to do this with any animation set. So play target animation and play target animation with rotation. You need to make a server RPC version of it basically and a client RPC. So we're going to check if we are the owner, then do all of this. And then right below that, we want to say character.character network manager .notify server of animation server RPC, and we pass our client ID. To do that, we need to say using unity.netcode because I don't think I have it here. No, I don't because I can't call upon the network manager. So come up and under our libraries, we're going to say using unity.netcode. And then right down below here again, we're going to say network manager .singleton .local client ID. And then we're going to pass the target anim for our animation and is performing action. Whoops, I'm getting my projects mixed up. Is interacting is what I called it on this one. I forgot. I'm used to using is performing action now. So pass is interacting if you want to pass that as well. And that's really it on this end. Now we need to take the logic from this function here and bring it back over to the character network manager. So first we'll set this up. So perform the animation. Well, right here we got to put this function perform animation from server. And then again we pass our client ID, or sorry, the animation ID and the is performing action. And that's good. And now up here in notify server of animation server RPC, we say process all clients, animation clients, or animations client RPC. So only a server can use a client RPC, but any player can ask the server to perform a client RPC if you set it up with a server RPC. So copy the logic from your play target animation and really delete everything except for the animation ID and is performing action. So let's just erase the can rotate, is interacting, is mirror, because remember, we're not controlling if other people can rotate. They handle that on their end. We're just copying where they are in the map and what they do, basically. So we don't need to check if they're allowed to rotate and all that stuff, because that's already being checked on their end of the game for them. So up here now, I'm going to make a character manager variable, call it character. Going to make an awake method, make sure it's virtual so I can override it later. Going to say character is equal to character.getComponent character manager. And now we should be good to test this. Now, you may be wondering why I commented out down here is interacting. I'm just going to scroll back to that in a second. So let's scroll down here, and I have to also raise can role and target animation should be animation ID, but see is interacting is commented out. I'm going to explain more on that in the future, but sometimes you might want to let the animation guide the location of the player, and sometimes you might want to copy the location directly from the other player. So you can see I'm rolling, but you see there's a tiny bit of slide when I do the animation. So in the future, we're going to make it so basically you copy the movement position of the character, but when the animation takes over, we're going to make it a blend between the animation's root motion and the location of that person on the network. And what that does is that makes it look more, I'll say, in line with how the animation would actually look if you played it locally, versus having that kind of floaty, slidey feel. So there's a lot of small things like that go into networking, at least in making it look nice. It's pretty simple to get something up and on the go, but when you want to make it look clean, you have to do a lot of tiny little things for certain segments of the functionality you have. So as usual, guys, I want to thank you for tuning in. It's been a long time now, so if you're this far in the series and you've watched every episode, you probably heard my voice for a couple of years, and that's pretty nuts to think. So thank you, as always, for tuning in. I appreciate you so much. And if you got something from this video and you want to leave a like and a comment, I would greatly appreciate it. I will see you guys in the next one.